Hello, lovely people. It's Nicola back in the Stitches and Slapdashery sewing room. It is Saturday today. It's been a cold February. The weather forecasters were right. We did get it down to -15 one night this week. Wow. I'm so glad for an efficient heat pump and furnace to keep our house warm because it's been stupid cold for a little while. I think it got up to -4 today. We were out shopping and driving around and my car said -4, which after it's been -15 actually doesn't feel so bad. In case you don't know, I live in British Columbia, Canada. So, you expect it to be cold in the winter. But really, it's been so mild up until the beginning of February that we thought we weren't really going to get a proper winter at all. So it's actually kind of nice. I think if I had to choose between a bitterly cold sunny day in winter and a blazingly hot sunny day in summer, I'd go for the cold one any day, as long as I don't have to be outside. It's been a week since my last vlog. I didn't think I was going to have much to talk about, but I've actually finished a few things. And I have a few new acquisitions, just little things, which have come in the mail or which I've picked up at work. So I'm going to show you those today. Monday I had a day off. And what did I have to do? Oh, that's right. I did an errand in the morning, and in the afternoon I went to see my friend Jane. So she did forewarn me that she had a bit of a sniffle, but she thought she was getting over it. And I said, okay, well, I'll come over anyway. And we didn't hug, but I just went and she made me cups of tea and we sat across the living room from each other, not close enough that she could, pass on her germs. Or so I thought. But I have to confess, I've got a bit of a scratchy throat today. And I don't know if it's just because I'm talking myself into it, because I know that she tested positive for COVID on Friday or Thursday. Might have been Thursday. And so did her husband. So it may just be my mind telling my body, oh, you're going to get sick, you're going to get sick. But yeah, I have got a bit of a scratchy throat today and a little bit of a headache. So I did wear a mask when I went out shopping earlier because we needed groceries really badly. We had no fresh stuff in the house. And needed to pop in at the library and the health food store. So just in case, I wore a mask and I'm feeling fine. At time of speaking, I am feeling perfectly fine. Just this little niggle in the throat, and you just don't know whether it's going to turn into anything or not. So I'm dosing myself up with all sorts of vitamins and things, and lemon ginger tea. I'm crossing my fingers, really. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday was super busy. I have to say those 7-hour shifts are a killer. I did prefer it when I was only doing 4.5 or 5-hour shifts out on the floor. And I think I'm the only person in the store who is actually getting longer hours right now, because with the cashier being in Mexico, the regular one, I seem to be stepping into her shoes and spending most of my time at the till. But she'll be back at the beginning of April. And hopefully get back into her usual role, and I will be freed up to help out on the floor and, I don't know, have a more varied day, really. Otherwise, it's just the same thing every day. And it is tiring. It has been less exhausting now that I've started taking my iron tablets again. So that's good. In fact, we went to the health food store today and I had run out of the iron capsules and I was looking for the same thing again, but they only had the liquid. So I ended up getting a different brand of a liquid. Can't remember what the name of it was. It looked European, like a German name or something. But it looks like it's got lots of good stuff in it, extra vitamins and things. And I'll take a couple of spoonfuls of that every day. And yeah, it definitely helps keeping the energy up, that's for sure. So let's get on with talking about a couple of new things that have arrived at my house this week. One of the things that I thought was super cute at Michael's was some erasers, but these aren't just any old erasers. I can never find a pencil eraser when I need one around here, and even if I could, it would probably be so old and dried up that it probably wouldn't work anyway. So I had decided that at some point I was going to buy some more. Well, these are the cutest things ever. I'll take them out of their package because they're probably all shiny and reflecting the light there. Look how cute these are. Erasers that look like donuts. They are so cute. And, you know, just a couple of bucks, honest. So now I have something for my oopsies, if I need them, if I can bear to actually make them dirty. There was a couple of other things I needed. Now, I don't know about you, but when I look at Amazon, I sometimes put things in my cart and then I leave them there and I don't actually buy them straight away. So sometimes I'll be browsing for something and I'll put something in my cart and then I'll forget about it. And maybe a week or a month later, I'll look at it again and I'll think, I don't need that. Let's just delete it. It's a good idea to sleep on purchases like that, isn't it? Because, you know, it cuts down on the impulse buying. So these two items were not impulse buys. They were ones I decided I needed. I have a whole bag of cam snaps. I had been running out of these little plastic snaps for making snap pouches and all that sort of thing for so long. I was starting to get desperate as to colours to match my fabric, and also, what am I trying to say? Full sets, like matching up a full set with the two snaps and the bits that snap together and everything. I was scraping the bottom of the proverbial barrel. So, I'm dropping everything on the floor here. Hold on a second. So this pack, I can't remember how many sets there are, but there's hundreds of them. So I've got black and I've got white, red, pink, green, pale pink, yellow. Let's get them out the way because they're falling off my lap anyway. Light blue and sort of a light lilac or light purple. Orange, turquoisey blue. Not sure what you'd call that. Maybe a mushroom colour. And a reddish purple and then a blue. Darker blue. So some of those colours I've had before in that little set I bought with the pliers a long time ago. And some of the colours are new to me. In a way, I thought that maybe I should just try and buy a whole bunch of clear ones, because then you wouldn't have to match it to anything, would you? If you had a clear one, you could see the fabric through it and it would always go with everything. But for some reason, I couldn't find the right size in the clear ones. And the ones I did find didn't have a very good review either. So, yeah, those snaps are going to go in my little hanging pouch over there on my pegboard. And those will last me for years. And years. The other thing I got a bee in my bonnet about a magnetic pincushion. In my last vlog, I tidied up my sewing table again, as I do. And if you watched that, you'll have seen me sort all the bits and pieces into those little greeny blue cases that I got in a big case from work. And the pins had nowhere to live. I have some really nice, sharp, glass-headed pins. Now, I love the white glass-headed pins because A, I can see them if they fall on the floor because I have a black carpet, and B, if you iron over them, they won't melt. But I kept catching it with my hand or my arm and tipping them everywhere. And also they fall on the floor quite a lot. So I thought, I really do need a magnetic pin cushion. So I bought a pack of 4. Because why not? Because I have friends. I can always offer the spare 3 to them. And in fact, I already have given one away. So this is the one I decided to keep for myself. It's the purple one. And it came in a pack with red and yellow and blue as well. And they work really well, as you can see. No pins falling off that. There's some dust coming off it, but no pins. So I'm really happy with this. So at some point, I'll be offering these 2 to somebody else because I don't need 3. But that's okay. I think they were $20 for 4. So yeah, it's a pretty inexpensive little gift for somebody. Yeah, the aforementioned friend who may have given me COVID. No, let's say it's not. She has the blue one now. Also, as you know, I am doing a bit of a stash down. And it's funny how, since I announced early in January that I wanted to do a bunch of stash busting and burn up a whole ton of my yarn, that I have since seen a lot of other podcasters or YouTubers mention they're doing the same thing. Kate at the Last Homely House is having a use what you have spree, and even Ali of Little Drops of Wonderful, just the other day, her latest podcast, she said, I need to use the yarn I've got and try and stop buying more. We're all getting to that point, right? Ideally, I would like to be down to 0 yarn, but don't worry, I'm not giving up knitting and crocheting. I just want to buy new stuff. I want to completely refresh the stash. So, to that end, I have made a massively heavy blanket right here. And I am working on sorting out what I've got left and using it up. I've been into Ravelry and I've completely updated my stash in there. So it is completely up to date. And I have been burning a little more stash this week. Since I joined Ravelry in, what was it, 2007 when they first started? I think it was. I have found out that people can collect a very large amount of yarn. And it's tempting to do so. And sometimes I have felt like I've had a lot of yarn. But the thing is, sometimes I get fed up with what I've got. And you want the new shiny thing. And so the old stuff just sits there and sits there. And you look at it and you're like, oh, what am I going to do with that? It's still in my stash. What am I going to make with it? Bought it on a whim or just because it was on sale or something like that. Or maybe I was given it. In some cases, I was given yarn. I used to say yes to anything that people were going to give to me. They would say, oh, my neighbor died and her husband cleared out her stash. Would you like to look at it? And I'll be like, yeah, of course. But no, I don't say yes to that anymore. It's dangerous. So I am on a stash down exercise for as long as it takes. And having done a stash flash in one of my previous vlogs and taken a careful inventory of what I have, it's very achievable. So let's take a look at what I've done this week, shall we? Less of the yak, Nicola. I have made 6 more dishcloths. Now these dishcloths are I think they're my own idea. I don't think I ever saw anything quite like this anywhere else. So let's say I unvented it. Elizabeth Zimmerman, famous knitter, used to say she unvented things because really there's nothing new in the world. And as far as she was concerned, she came up with an idea that may have been thought of before. She just hadn't heard of it. So she didn't take credit for it. So These dishcloths are something I love to make and use because they are awesome. They have a double thick polyester scrubby yarn in the middle and then a cotton outer ring. And sometimes I chuckle to myself and think, if you did this in yellow center and white outer, it would look like a fried egg. The trouble is, who wants a white dishcloth? That would be totally impractical, wouldn't it? Yeah, it would get dirty and gross looking in no time at all. So I like bright colors, and that's what I'm making these with. These yarns I'm using are from Fabricland's brand called Spindle a long time ago. Definitely a few years ago. Their brand is Taylor now, and a long time ago it was Spindle, and they went on clearance and I snapped up a bunch of it. So this box is fitting everything I have left of that now. So this is the polyester scrubby yarn here, which I have in blue, purple and yellow, and this is their essential cottons, which I've got in purple, blue and orange. And I have made tons of these dishcloths. I have used these in my kitchen for years and they last so long. I think I've only ever had to throw maybe one away because the cotton wore out. And, you know, it may not have even worn exactly. I may have accidentally wiped it against a knife blade or something. I don't usually use them to wash the dishes. It's more for mopping up spills. I normally use little scrubbies that I've crocheted from tulle strips. Tulle, tulle, like netting, to wash the actual dishes. So this week I finished 6. I've got 3 blue ones and 2 orange ones and the purple and yellow. And I don't know if I'm going to keep these for myself or slip them into gifts for people because I really do have a lot of dishcloths. It's crazy how many dishcloths I have. But as I say, they do eventually wear out. But yeah, so super useful. So if you think that a tutorial for these would be useful, do let me know in the comments because I'm happy to make a tutorial for these. It should be easy and quick. And the nice thing about these projects was they were portable and I actually managed to get some done in my breaks at work, which is why I've managed to churn out 6 of them this week. So this box is going to be left on my coffee table. I'm going to toss the hook back in there. I used a 5mm hook. And it's just going to be something I grab when I'm not working on anything else until this is all gone. There has been more crochet this week than just about anything else. I have done some sewing. I'll show you that in a bit. This is more spindle yarn. This grey stuff here is, I think it's called Essential Basics or something. And again, on clearance, like $3 a ball. It's lovely soft stuff. And I multi-stranded it and used a lovely big hook and made a beanie. Because once this was finished, I didn't want to put the greys in it. So I decided to use the grey up in here. Can't remember if I already showed you this. I don't think I did. I know that I photographed these things and put them on Ravelry and shared them in a couple of the groups in there. And so I may be getting mixed up and thinking I already showed you something when I didn't. Anyway, this is the other beanie I made. There's some bulky yarn in there, like a band of bulky yarn that I made a gorgeous cardigan for myself out of, and I cannot remember the brand. I know I bought it from Wool Warehouse in the UK a long time ago. I cannot remember what the brand was, but that's the last of it right there. And I know I talked about hats last week, didn't I? That's right, I talked about hats last time because I had started crocheting this and I had made it too big, and then I thought I would make it with a turned up brim, and it ended up coming all the way over my head and down to my neck and still just not working out at all. I remember now. 2 hats out of that one mess up. So that worked great. So once I had finished those, I'm going to have a bunch of stuff to pick up off the floor after this. I deliberately made something massive. And this is what came out of the last of the grey yarn. I probably should put some of these things on, shouldn't you? My hair's already a mess. I didn't style it today, so let's just put these on. So these are really cozy. These big beanies, nice and cozy. And I think my plan was to donate them somewhere locally. I probably should have done it at the beginning of the week because it's been so darned cold. And if there's anyone who's trying to survive outside in these temperatures, they need warm stuff. So here we go. Helps if you put the eye holes at the front. I shared a photograph of this on Ravelry and people said it looks like I should have a sword to go with it. Because it does look a bit like a chainmail knight's helmet, doesn't it? But yeah, that's really warm too. So that's my grey worsted weight yarns all finished. It's looking a lot emptier up in the cubbies up there now. Another of the things I talked about earlier in January was that I wanted to get practicing on the serger I got secondhand. And I thought that using up some of my fleece scraps would be a good idea. I've got a little bit of a stash of scrap fabrics over here. In my closet area behind me, I've got quite a lot of jersey knit fabric, quite a few fleece bits, and quite the mixture of things. And a lot of it's not good for much because they're only small pieces, but it's a good amount for making beanies. So I set up my sewing table. It's got the sewing machine and the serger right next to each other, because I knew that if I made a fleece beanie, I could do the seams on the serger, but I'd have to hem it on the sewing machine. This hat that I've made, I've done a few before. It's called the Basic Fleece Hat, and it's from fleecefun.com. And I obviously printed it out. You don't need to print this whole thing out. You could just print out the page with a template because, you know, it's fairly straightforward. Although I did just revisit the blog page just to make sure I was doing the seams in the right order. But really, it's pretty mindless. Once you've made one, it's simple. And I have a feeling when I printed this out, it may not have come out quite the right size. I think it took me a couple of attempts to get it to come out my size. So this is what the template looks like. As you can see, there's tons of different sizes there. And this is my size. And you just cut it out with the stretchiest part of the fabric going acrosswise, of course, because you need it to stretch sideways to get it on and off. And if you have a specific print on your fleece, it's nice to position the hat piece so that you've got a nice bit of the print right where you want it. So you cut two of these out, and then all you do is you sew this seam and this seam, hold the two pieces right side together, and then you turn it sideways, and then you sew that top seam. I'll show you what I mean. I ran up about, let's see, how many? Was it 6 of them? I ran up 6 of them in no time at all. Sergers work super fast. I'm going to have to go back and look at the video I tried to make of me actually serging. It's probably very shaky because I had my little tripod on my sewing table right next to the serger with my phone pointing at the serger. And the serger is not just noisy, but vibrates a lot. And at one point, the tripod fell over. So I will have to see whether it's worth showing you. I might just do it for entertainment value. So I actually wore this today because, as I said, it's really, really cold right now. That's my Hello Kitty one. Well, hang on, it's one of my Hello Kitty ones. I have quite a few Hello Kitty fabric remnants. This one matches my onesie. So if ever the heating goes out in here, not only will I have my onesie on, but I'll be able to wear a matching hat to go with it. So that was one. This one matches some pajama pants that I made for my husband, pajama trousers, if you are in Britain. It's not very stretchy though. This fleece, it's very, very unstretchy and quite thin. It makes decent enough pajama pants, but the hat, it's okay. But it has to be exactly the right size because it's not really stretching to fit. I love this print. This is what I'd call a First Nations type print. Here in Canada, there is a lot of native artwork that has things like thunderbirds on it and that sort of thing. So I love that one. That one came out well. A Hello Kitty hat, of course. And then my other Hello Kitty fabric was this one, which I have some pajama trousers made out of that. This is quite a thin one. And then the last hat I made was a double thick one. The instruction said if you want to make it reversible, you could cut it out bigger and then just sew the two hats together, basically. The one downside to this is that when I top stitched it, after I had sewn the two parts of the hats together and flipped it right side out, I top stitched it and I think I stretched it out a bit too much because it doesn't grip the head. It's weird. It doesn't feel right. It's fun though. I do love Hello Kitty. 6 hats, plus the 3 I made in the crochet. 9 hats for this week. And I also made a 10th one. I finally made some decisions on how to use some of my granny squares. A while ago, I bought some of that Red Heart all-in-one granny square yarn, and I made tons. I think each ball makes 14 or 15 squares, and I can't remember how many. I think I had 4 colorways. I think I had 60 squares in the end, something like that. I made myself a sleeveless top, which I have worn around the house a couple of times, and also when I've been out once, I had it under my coat, but I'm a bit self-conscious in it. And what else did I make? Oh yes, I made that sling bag. I just remembered I have the sling bag hanging on the hook on the back of my sewing room door. So this is one thing I made as well. And it only took 4 squares. And I lined it. I'm not a fan of putting zips into crochet. It's a pain in the you-know-what. But I lined it. And I put my label on it. That's one thing I forgot to do with my more recent bags, is I forgot to use my labels. But it's not like I'm doing the market anymore. And I crocheted the handle, the strap. I thought I was careful to make sure that I had allowed for stretch, but really, it's still stretched out and it's hanging a little low on me now. But that's okay, I can just knot it if I need to. I'm not going to faff about with that now. So after I had made the top and the bag, I had 30 squares left. And we're finally getting to the point, Nicola. So I have been agonizing the last couple of weeks about what I'm going to do for those last 30 squares. And I didn't really want to make another top. I considered it, but I don't know if I'm going to do that. So the one thing I did make was a 10th hat for the week. It uses 3 squares, and I happen to have only 3 of these purple ones left, so it worked perfectly for that. I haven't even looked at myself in it yet, but probably looks kind of goofy. Yep, a little bit goofy, huh? So 3 squares just sewn together to make a ring, and then a row of, or a round of single crochet along this edge. For the crown, I went around with double crochet, just working into all the stitches, and then also working once into the joining slip stitch where I had put them together. And then I did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 decrease rows, rounds. I think I started with, let's see, what did I do? I started with four stitches and a decrease, 4 stitches and a decrease. I had 66 stitches. So yeah, that works. So double crochet 4, decrease, and then double crochet 3, decrease, and then 2, and then 1. And when there was still a fairly sizable hole at the top, I just put a yarn, wove the yarn around through the stitches and drew it tight. Because if I'd carried on with any more rounds, it would have been a bit too fluffy on the top, and I wanted to draw it in and finish it off so that it wasn't sticking up at the top of my head. So yeah, that's going to be the world's draftiest hat. It's going to be more for shoulder seasons or just for show. Just because if I ever am in the mood to wear a granny square hat, it's probably not going to keep me very warm. But I love it all the same. The other thing I decided to use the granny squares on was a tea cozy. And it's not like I really needed another tea cozy, because a year or 2 ago, my friends and I had this really fun sewing day where we all made tea cozies. And I have a lot of teapots. I think I have at least 3 larger ones and 1 smaller one. I acquired extra one year when a really, really good friend of mine, who I used to call my kids' local grandmother, even though she was a friend of mine, but because their actual grandparents were thousands of miles away. And so this was my kid's local grandmother. She had her, what was it, her 85th birthday party, I think. And I organized the food and drink for that, and we had a tea party. And so I went to the thrift shop and I bought more teapots because we needed to have lots of teapots on the go. And we had sandwiches and scones, and I can't remember what else, but it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work too, but it was a lot of fun. And this is one of the teapots that I acquired at the time, and this is my favorite because of the print on it. It's a teapot with lots of little teapots on it. I mean, isn't that amazingly brilliant? It's a nice size too. It's like a, what do you call it? Like a 4 mug sized one, really. A litre, probably. I don't know. I've never really officially measured it. Oh man, it has a chip in the spout now. Never mind. I'm not going to get rid of it because I love it so much. So what I decided to do is I've used 6 more of the squares in this pink colorway to make a rectangle. It's not going to be the sort of tea cozy that fits on the pot while you use it, because one of the ones I sewed fits on the pot while you use it, and it is so badly tea stained now that obviously I knew that was going to happen, and I accepted that it was going to look stained from the first time I used it. But this will just slip over the pot when it's sitting and brewing, and then I'll take it off for pouring. Now, if you're wondering about whether it's going to keep the tea very warm, I have a plan for that. I picked out some of my turquoise coloured cotton, quilt cotton, which is rather lovely. I am going to line it with that. Now, what's nice about this fabric is you can see some of the turquoise on the back of it, because when I have lined it you'll see through to the, no, actually you won't. What am I saying? I'm lying, because I'm going to be using some batting as well. I'm going to be using some of this synthetic batting, which feels super cheap and nasty, but it's just going to be a tea cozy. And I don't even remember how I got it. I think probably it was a cheap or a free thing when I was working at Fabricland. I'm not sure. But I want to make the tea cozy with some batting and some lining. So yeah, you'll see the batting through the holes, but that's okay because the batting is white. It won't be a problem. So that's the plan. I'm going to measure how big this is, and I'm going to make a lining for it and just attach it around this bottom edge when it's sewn. I'm going to have to make the lining a little bit smaller so that it fits in. 12.5 by 9. So let's see, if I just put this on the fabric and cut it out, then I'll have a little bit of extra, won't I, for seam allowances. Once I have sewn it, the seam allowance will bring it in. I might add a little bit more at the bottom opening so that I've got a bit more to hem with. Okay, this is rather cool. This quilt cotton is different on the edges and is in the middle, like an ombre effect. Actually, if I was to cut it on the fold, I wouldn't have to seam along the top, but I rather like this silvery area, the denser patterned area, better. So there's going to be a seam. I don't like incorporating selvages into my sewing, so let's trim those off. I love how selvages have got more interesting now. See if I can show you that. So you see that selvage? It's not like the old-fashioned circles where they used to just do a little circle of colour. These days, the selvages can be really fun. Like if you've got a fabric with sheep on it, sometimes the little swatches along the side where they show the different colours that went into the fabric, they're little sheep, or they're butterflies, or something fun like that. And I have actually collected selvages for a while, in the past anyway, and tried making a bag out of just selvages. And then I saw somebody on YouTube doing it the other day. I was ahead of the trend. I'm going to cut a little bit extra than the selvage off because I think I'm going to keep that in my scrap basket. My scrap basket is a little out of control right now. This basket which I crocheted a little while back, is full. And this one is full too and really heavy. This one's my organized one. I don't know if you were here and you see. I don't know if you were here when I did all this cutting. I think that was last year. But I went through a scrap basket like this and I cut a whole bunch of neat squares out of my scraps. So I've got 2-inch ones, 3-inch ones, 6-inch ones, 5-inch ones, 4-inch ones. Oh, and there's some 2-inch, roughly 2-inch strips, I think, which I didn't end up cutting up because I thought I could use them as is. Not all 2-inch strips, that one's wider. So these strips were the ones that I decided not to cut. I didn't realise those were all still in the bottom of there, but these guys are ready to use. And my plan is to also go through these scraps and do the same thing with it at some point. Make neat squares out of it, and then I will eventually make something pretty. I'm not sure why I'm keeping these tiny squares. These are probably too small to bother with. I know there are some people who would use stuff that's that small, but I don't think I'm going to. Anyway, that's a project for another time. Let's get on with this. So yeah, if I cut it exactly the same size as the exterior of this crochet, and then I sew it with like a 1/4 of an inch seam, say, then it should fit inside quite nicely, but I'll allow a bit more along the bottom because I'll be hand sewing that eventually. So I'm going to use my scissors very carefully, not cutting my crochet. There. And then I'll cut my batting the same size. I could make a whole quilt using this. There's tons of it. And I have no idea when I got it. So I do need 2 pieces though, don't I? Front and a back. Cotton basically sticks to batting quite nicely, so I think I'm just going to press it down and then cut around it. I might even serge this together. Right sides together, and then these 2 layers together, and I'm going to, yeah, I think I'll serge these. I'm going to go up, down, up and across and a down, up and across and down on the other piece, and then it'll be ready to put it inside the crochet and then figure out how I'm going to do it around the bottom edge. I just realized I may need to keep 2 of these magnetic pin cushions for myself because this one can hold pins and this one can hold needles. And also I could put currently unused sewing machine needles on that one as well. Okay, friends, looks like you're out of luck. I've only got 1 spare one now. Okay, so this serger has 4 different colors of thread because I was practicing a couple of months ago getting the tension right, and they say that if you thread it with 4 different colors of thread, then you can see which one may not be the right tension. And I'm just going to use these up until they're gone. My friend gave me a whole bunch of these cones of various colors of thread. I don't know what the quality is like. I have no idea what make it is or anything, but they're perfect for the serger. So that's what I'm using them for. And it really doesn't matter what color thread I'm using because it's going to be inside the tea cozy. All right, let's see. Wish me luck, guys. I'm going to try and do this without the blade actually cutting any fabric off because obviously I've cut it the right size and I don't want it to do much trimming. Well, one of the things you have to get used to with a serger is that you don't really go around corners. You just like shoot off the end and then you start again for the second side and then again for the third. Just trying to make sure these edges are matching up. They're not quite. There we are. This is just magic. It just does the most amazing seam. as I said, it completely shakes everything on the table. So that's done. And then I'm going to do the same with the fabric. Now, they do warn you when you look at all the serger videos on YouTube not to use pins on here. And usually you can just like guide the fabric in and it works fine without any holding. But if you do want to hold the fabrics together when you're sewing, it's a better idea to do those quilt clips, because that way it's not going to get sucked into your machine and break all your needles. Can you see I've put this non-slip vinyl under here? I put it under both of the machines actually when I was working on them the other day. This quilting machine is very light that I have here, and it tends to move around quite easily if I'm working on anything heavy or bulky. And this thing, I think it would just shake itself right off the table if you didn't have something non-slip underneath it. All right, let's see if I've used my brain here. So what I could do, I suppose, is, in a way, if I didn't want the seam possibly visible through my crochet, yeah, I think that's going to be the better idea. Is if I put the batting around this way, like so, and I just slide that in there. Okay, now let's pop this inside here. I'm not going to bother trimming off those thread tails because they're going to be hidden in there. Let's see how that looks. All right. All right, I've got my hand sewing needle thingy, which is a little messy and a little mixed up, but let's pick a needle here. That one will probably work. And I wondered about white or turquoise thread, but I've gone for turquoise. Now let's see if I can make this work. Now, if I was being sensible, I'd put that needle right on there, wouldn't I? Because I said I was going to do that, and then it won't get swept onto the floor and end up in my foot. All right, now that I've managed to turn over that part, I'm going to start clipping it to the crochet. And let's also talk about how we got to where we are today in our crafting. So, a teeny tiny bit of history. I promise not to go on forever and ever and a day. So, I first remember knitting when I was about 7, I think. And my mum taught me to knit. It's interesting, actually, because she was the sort of person who used to do a kind of a lever knitting, in that she had her right hand needle above her hand, not inside her hand, and just sort of throw or flick the yarn like that. And yet when she taught me, I had the overhand grip, the typical overhand grip of the new knitter, and knitted English style, throwing the yarn with my right hand. And that's how I thought everybody knitted, really, was throwing with the right hand. I didn't know there was another way until later on. And I knitted a few things. I used to knit for my teddy bear. I knitted a few things for myself that didn't really fit, because I didn't understand about gauge at the time. And then I had this boyfriend whose mum crocheted when I was in my late teens. And I think, and the funny thing is, I can't actually bring to mind her actually teaching me to crochet, but it must have been her, because no one in my family could crochet. And she had granny square blankets on her sofas. And she must have taught me just how to do a granny blanket. And I think that's pretty much all she ever did. And that got me starting on the crochet side of things, probably about 18 at the time. My next major memory of crafting would be when I did some macrame, and I made one of those traditional brown owls hanging from a stick. You know, everyone had those back in the 70s, didn't they? I'm pretty sure I submitted it to a local arts competition. Can't remember whether I won anything. And then another fond memory is of when my mum and I did an embroidery course together. She ended up not being particularly excited about the whole thing, but I made a kingfisher embroidery. I've still got it. It's on the wall. Hang on, where is it? Oh, it's right here. I'll show it to you. So this kingfisher embroidery is one I did when I was about 21. I'm sure the glass is very clean. But I traced the shape for it. Sorry, you're seeing the glare from the ring light, aren't you? I traced the shape for it out of a book and figured out all the colours and the stitches myself. And I was really proud of myself for that. I thought I did a nice job there. I mean, considering it was my first foray into embroidery. Used to get lots of magazines with crafty things in them as well. I used to spend a fair whack of my pay back in the day on those women's magazines that always seemed to have a sewing pattern in, or a knitting pattern. Or there was that thing that came out, I don't know if it was weekly or monthly, maybe it was weekly, and it was called Stitch by Stitch. And you collected about 96 issues of these things and put them in binders. And sometimes I regret getting rid of those, because they were great. They'd be very dated now, of course. My stitches are going to be a bit visible, I think, but it's going to be right on the bottom edge, and I think it'll be okay. I remember knitting myself a few sweaters in my 20s, which I actually did wear. There was one yellow one, a dolman sleeve one, that I definitely wore and liked. And then there was the time when I started this Guernsey for my father out of pretty skinny wool. I think it was burgundy coloured wool. And I think I only got about a couple of inches into it before I decided it was too much work. And I'm pretty sure that thing sat in my mum's attic for many, many years after I abandoned it. And eventually got tossed when she moved out of that house. what was cool about the whole knitting and crocheting journey is that I was getting back into it all, and I was with a group of friends who were getting really obsessed about it and all gathered around knitting and crocheting like mad when we were together, and our kids were playing together. But then Ravelry came along, and oh boy, that was just amazing. I was probably blogging at that point already, but when Ravelry came along, it just sent my interest up into the stratosphere because there was so much interest on there. It's an amazing community. I could track all my projects. I'm not sure how many projects I've got on there right now, probably about 900. And it got to the point where I was having a little competition with myself to see how many things I could complete in a year. I'm not at that point anymore. I've got too many interests happening at one time to be competing with myself for yarn projects, because a lot of my time's been going into sewing as well and that sort of thing. So it's not like I'm quite as focused on the one thing anymore. But I still faithfully record every project, and I'm on there multiple times a day in the forums, answering questions and posting my stuff and all that sort of thing. There is something very satisfying about hand sewing, isn't there? I can see why people enjoy it. So I can't remember how many squares I've got left. I had 30. I used 3 for the hat, and then I used 6 for this. So that means I should have 21 left. Most of them are the red colorway of the yarn, because I haven't used any of the red ones yet. There are 15 of those, and then the rest will be this pink color. And I have a huge long list of things that one can make with granny squares, because I've been doing my research and racking my brains the last little while, as I said. So we're going to get these squares made up into things, and that will be another thing off the to-do list. Just putting the final stitches in this now, and then I can try it on the teapot. And then I think what I need to do the next time I have friends over make sure I use it so they can see my new tea cozy. Ta-da! It fits perfectly. Yep, it goes on. And it's the exact right size. And of course, when it's on there, you can't see that there's the fabric sticking out the bottom. You can see it through the holes a little bit, but that's unavoidable. Unless you want to do a lining and a batting and then another lining on the inside, and that would have used twice as much cotton, and I don't think that's necessary. It's fine as it is. And so my new tea cozy is ready. I'm really pleased with that. I think out of the 4 different colorways that I bought of this yarn, I think this is my favorite one. Not really surprising, is it? Because turquoise and bright pink, 2 of my favorite colors. I will definitely be putting that into the rotation with my other tea cozies from now on. Well, where did the time go? You know, time flies when you're having fun, and I just had a lot of fun recording this vlog for you and making my tea cozy. Another thing I've been really enjoying doing is watching BritBox lately. I don't know if you're in the UK and watching things as they happen, or if you're catching up on on any of your streaming services. But I have really been enjoying the show called Vera. It's about a female detective who's probably about my age in Northern England. And she's a detective inspector, and she has her team, and they're solving murders, of course. It's funny how the British love their crime dramas, isn't it? Makes me laugh sometimes. But I have watched all 14 seasons now. And I even watched an extra show. It was the making of Vera. And so I had to watch that as well, of course. And the funny thing is, there's a guy at work who's from the Newcastle area, which is where this is made. And so yesterday when I was leaving the shop, I said, "So I'll see you tomorrow, pet." Actually, I didn't say I'll see you tomorrow, because that would have been today, and I'm having my day off today. I probably just said, "I'll see you later, pet." And he said, "What? You come from Newcastle now, do you?" And I said, "No, but I've been watching 14 seasons of Vera." And he said, "Oh, you sad, sad person." When I asked him if he'd watched it, he said, "No, I just want to forget about being in England. I'm living here now." Okay, then. That was so funny. And the other thing I've been watching is Grace. And I can't remember the name of the actor who plays the main policeman in that. But I watched the first episode or two quite a long time ago, and they've just got the third season. They've got the third season on BritBox now. And I really, really, really like his character. He's just so nice, and he's got a lovely personality. And of course, he gets the job done, as all these TV cops do. So I've been really, really enjoying watching an episode of that. I'm trying not to binge watch these days. I've been getting up so early to get to work, usually for 9 o'clock, that I've frequently been in bed at 9 o'clock or thereabouts. And so, yeah, watching more than one episode of some sort of drama in an evening isn't happening. So I've been quite careful to budget them, as it were, and just watch one episode a night at most. It's funny because in the past I've been the night owl, and I've wanted to stay up late and get up late if I could. And Mr. Stitches is always in bed before me, usually. But just lately, I've been doing these longer shifts at work that have started quite early, and I've been in bed before him a lot of nights. Oh dear. You know you're getting old when the idea of a good night out is a good night in, really, isn't it? Well, I need to go up and start getting some food ready. So I'll say thank you for watching, and I'd love to read any comments that you'd like to leave underneath the video, because I like to know you're watching, get some feedback. Yeah, know that people are enjoying my videos. So let me know about your crafting or anything else that we talked about today, or whatever you like. So I will see you again soon with some more things that I've made, and hopefully I won't have had COVID by the time you see me next. Now, I definitely have this sore throat, and yeah, I'm hoping it's nothing. Fingers crossed. Bye for now.